Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. And we are back with our friend and coach, Patria, from The Broken and the Beautiful. And you can find out more about Patria on her website and what she offers. Or go, if you listened to last week, you're going to hear a little bit more about Patria. But we have her back today to just continue our discussion around the topic of shame. Thank you for joining us again, Patria.
So happy to be here.
So we're going to pick up really right from where we left off last week, and that is to just kind of we were kind of talking about being able to rename and reframe some of these places of shame, and just there's this realization that before we can expose our shame, we have to get to this place where we can really feel safe enough with that other person to be able to expose something that we have held in secret for so long. I'm curious, Patria, as you are a coach, you work with people all day long for many years. What are some of the ways that you and that we can help the people around us who are struggling with shame feel safe? How do we actually help another person feel safe in our presence?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is to engage our own shame and to have a sense of how shame shows up for us, and to know when I'm being triggered in my shame. And because shame gloms together, I think of it as like a glomming, which is probably a real technical word for shame kind of begets shame. And so if I'm not aware of ways that I'm feeling shame, then I can't provide containment and stability for that kind of shaking and disruption and dysregulation that shame brings to a nervous system. But if I can be stable and hold space and wait it out, wait the earthquake out, then stability will come back. And then shame has actually been dealt with to some degree, even just in that attunement and containment. And that's a lot of what safety is. And really what we all need to know is that we can make it. We can get through to the other side. There's gonna be another side, and I'm not gonna die when I start experiencing this feeling. And I can help by having come to the other side myself and helping you get to the other side by providing that stability. And I think I'm not a psychologist. I think psychologically that's just a lot to do with connecting our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex. And I call it the wiggly amygdala, when we get really dysregulated in shame. We need our thinking brain to help. And we need somebody outside of us to help us do that. So I think that's maybe the beginning, the middle, and the end. I don't know of how to engage shame. Yeah.
You like to laugh, so this might make you laugh. I don't know. I'm not that funny, but sometimes I try to be. So I'm just thinking these spaces where we're all holding one another, whether it's individual coaching or a group setting, and you were talking about the wiggly amygdala, and I'm just thinking, I know there's times, I'm just going to use me for an example, that those who are holding space have to be like, we've got to get Kandace connected back to her prefrontal cortex. and and how sweet that is, right? That we have those spaces where if you haven't engaged your own shame, but you see someone dysregulated and you can hold steady, and invite that person back to connecting to their prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. I'm so curious too, Kandace, about that feeling that you have there. I mean, I think it feels like it connects to that intensity that we were talking about last week. and how, of course, that's the feeling that you have, that your wiggly amygdala is just so much, like we're all trying to, and I wouldn't want that to like be unaddressed, because I think that's the way that it feels for us. Is it feels intense and it feels impossible, and it feels like, I've had the thought, I don't think anybody can hold my dysregulation when I get dysregulated, and I think that's the feeling that shame brings, is it's too much, too fast. There's nobody that can help. Or it takes everybody, even God himself doesn't know how to handle this, kind of feeling. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to say that too, that I think that's the feeling of shame right
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Well, in
Yeah.
that dysregulation of our nervous system that you referenced, and I think for
Yeah.
Candace,
Yeah.
we've come to know that not only does Candace's amygdala get wiggly, but if we can get her body moving,
Yes.
right, Candace, like moving your body helps you regulate your nervous system. We talked 2 weeks ago on the podcast about when I got really dysregulated at retreat, and my nervous system response was I wanted to flee. Like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to get out of the room, and thankfully, I was able to put words to it, and I mean, I think it was obvious. I was showing dysregulation, I think, but it just took a minute, maybe 2 minutes, for me to go from a 10 to a 2, where my nervous system got re-regulated and my prefrontal cortex came back online. We could re-engage the conversation and I was able to be present, like 2 minutes, maybe. That is what we're talking about here. But there have been times for me when my nervous system has gotten when I've been dysregulated and maybe not been in a context where I had help, and I could not get grounded, and I just checked out in some way. So I love this concept that you're bringing up of the nervous system. And can you just maybe say more about that? What are some of the different ways that can look for people?
Well, I think we have to think about it in the trauma context for clarity, So if we think about it in the fight, flight, or freeze, generally speaking, then it helps us to see what it can look like. So you mentioned fleeing. Um, sometimes freeze response is the response. I would say, having been there in the room with you at that moment, you looked like you were frozen to me from the outside looking in, but
Mm.
your internal experience was one of wanting to get out of there. And so it's really, that's just an important distinction to understand. We have to ask questions and be curious there too. But that's a way. Dissociation is a really, really common and helpful way to um, to survive those like in unbearable shocks of shame and or anger, or just emotions that are too big that have not been contained. And so dissociation just means that I don't know psychologically what it means, but image wise, I think of an image of coming up and out of my body, because my body is where all the intensity is being felt. So somehow or another, we're able to kind of come up and out and dissociate or fragment away from the high shocks of shame that we're feeling in our bodies. Yeah. And that's a gift. That's what we need in those moments. But then the surprise is that it doesn't take more than 2 minutes or three to actually be able to feel safe enough to come back. That's always a surprise. Like,
Mhm.
oh, oh, that's all I needed. Yeah, that's it.
I
Right.
love what you told me one time about um, kind of getting regulated. And this was a long time ago, but it has stuck with me. And in fact, it's one of those things that I share with my clients now.
Mm. Yeah.
And so basically it's this idea of like you said, well, I just want you to be kind to yourself and kind to others, like whatever that looks like for you. If you can have drink a glass of wine just to chill the heck down or whatever. But it
Yep.
just has stuck with me in my dysregulation. Am I turning against myself or am I turning against somebody else?
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so now I say, okay, can I do this? And is there a sense of kindness towards myself and towards those who would be affected by it?
Wow. And I just hear in that the like it takes intentionality and noticing and choosing. Like you're choosing something there, and that something might be changing over time. But usually what I have said in those spaces is you can't hurt yourself and you can't hurt somebody else. But in those early moments where you're trying to define safety and create safety within the space, it's like, yeah, whatever's working for you to get regulated is fine. Inside of these two parameters, you can't hurt yourself and you can't hurt somebody else. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it can be so confusing for us when we're in this space because we're sitting
Yeah.
here as, 50-year-old or 60-year-old or however old person that we are, and something has happened that has caused dysregulation,
Mhm.
and we don't, in that moment we can't always connect with why did I get so dysregulated. And so what we're talking about here is the effects of childhood trauma. And when we have gone through some kind of traumatic experience as a child, all of a sudden we're in a situation as an adult, and boom, we have been triggered. Something happened, we got triggered, we got dysregulated, our nervous system is going crazy and in either in hyper arousal where we're really spooled up, or hypo where we're dissociated or shutting down or whatever. We kind of use that word, the tentacles of shame can really wrap around us. And we're talking about the nervous system here, which I think is really important because I think, again, when we can recognize that, oh, what's happening to me right now is my nervous system is dysregulated.
Mhm.
What can I do to get myself back grounded again? And I'm wondering if you want to just offer a few practical things that can help us get regulated. Sometimes, like we said, it can take a long period of time, but sometimes, and the more we practice, the more we can find that more quickly too. But what are some things that
Yeah.
help us get free from those tentacles?
Yeah. Yeah, that word tentacles is good. I know. I think of an octopus and just how it kind of wraps around or suctions up, to us, and that can bring it that sense of this is so big and so much, and so there's no help coming. I can't be helped, and if we can kind of get a little space between the feeling and what we know to be true, and that takes work. But we can recognize that it is nervous system. It's actually literally, the earliest part of us that develops in the womb starts with the nervous system, right? And you see all those, every part of us is connected to our spine and our head. And it's kind of like if we can think of it less like, oh, there's something so terrible or wrong, and more like I've got the hiccups, and how do I pause? How do I how do I interrupt the hiccups? It's more like that actually when we're talking about the nervous system. And so it can be really helpful to take a walk, get a drink of water, even just say, whoa, out loud to somebody or not, it doesn't even matter, just to say out loud, I'm feeling dysregulated. To unhook our brain and rehook it to something else. If you're watching one program and get dysregulated, hook it to another program, just change the channel. And we have to it's like having a safety plan for anything. We have to be prepared for that outside of the dysregulation. But it's not actually as difficult. Generally, that's not true for everybody, but generally speaking, it's not as difficult as it feels in those moments.
I love you making that point, Patria. And I think when we get dysregulated in our shame, it feels fatal.
Yes.
It feels like I cannot survive this. And yes. I love how you said it's like the hiccups. It's like, and if we can believe that, like, and then I'm thinking about our listeners who have felt this sense of, I've moved toward my story a time or two, and I got so dysregulated that I just will never go back there again. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to say those words. I'm not going to tell those stories. And I really appreciate you bringing it down to this place where we can say, yes, we have to go slow. Yes, we need somebody who can help guide us through. And that when we get dysregulated, it's not fatal, even though in the moment it can feel fatal.
Yeah. And that's what complex trauma or even non-complex PTSD causes, is it causes the system to not find its way back to regulation as easily. And that's when we need treatment. And so story work isn't treatment. And so we take people into dysregulation and story work. And there are times, and I say this fairly frequently, go get some EMDR, or let's do every other week and do EMDR and come back to story work, because you're actually needing some treatment of your nervous system to be able to go deeper into these stories. And it's real. Those are real problems. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just listening and thinking of how I want this taught in every school system.
Yeah, from kindergarten.
From kindergarten on, like that analogy of the hiccups, one, I'm going to start using for myself. And of course, I'm going to pass it on to my clients.
Yeah.
But because those feelings of feeling fatal for some kids start at a very young age. Yeah. And unfortunately for some kids, it really is. I mean, they are being abused and there's no escape, especially if they're not being seen and taken out. But this idea of, I don't know, I'm just singing a kid's book called When You Get the Hiccups.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I mean, yes. I've always thought about when I was a little girl, I didn't have a lot of safety, and I needed safety and security like every kid did. And so true to nature, I kind of found my own. I just found my own. I say found my own, but it was through some objects that I had, and it was a little nightlight. And that light, I've often thought about kids, like just helping kids understand. It's like turning the light back on, or keeping the light on. Don't sleep in the dark if you're scared in the dark. Put the night light on. If you need a softer blanket, don't sleep with the crunchy blanket. Let's get you a soft blanket, and just helping to, in those early years, to normalize all those things. So anyway, that's where my mind went, because I love the idea of taking this to children. I think that would be really fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. And so there's like a million more things that I want
Yes.
directions that I really want to go with this, because I will say this. I'm watching my son and daughter-in-law parent my 3 grandchildren in ways that I didn't have a clue. Like they do have information that I didn't know about how to engage the nervous system of their children, how to help them get regulated. When do you need a timeout and when do you need to be present? And And so it is beautiful actually to watch it. I'm getting to actually watch it happen in the lives of my
Wow.
grandchildren, which is, so lovely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the younger generation today has a lot of these tools, like you see it all over social media. These little even reels that we can learn from. And so I'm grateful that there is that. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up this episode from either of you?
I was thinking about one other question that you had sent me kind of to prepare was, what does shame look like? And I know that we've talked a little bit about that, but I wanted to circle back to that just a little more directly, maybe, and talk about how it can look so different. And again, the particularity, it might look different, but generally speaking, it looks like no eye contact or little eye contact. It looks like downcast face, slumped shoulders, isolation. And if you have listeners that are doing self-evaluation of where's my shame, um, just notice when it's harder to stand up straight. Notice notice what does black feel like to you. Notice when you're pushing yourself to do something that maybe is too hard, and maybe you need a little break there. So these are just observational tools, and there's a million things that we could talk about, but that's what shame looks like. It's pushing too hard, looking away, not pushing hard enough. Sometimes we pull back, we withdraw, and don't move forward. So I just kind of wanted to talk about what it looks like a little more directly.
Mm.
That
I
makes
Yeah, it's reminding me of something you said recently, and so and this this could be a whole episode, Patria. I know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think it's worthy to mention right now as also a way that shame can look, and that you talked about how when anger and shame are combined, it looks like rage.
Hmm.
And which is different than the slumped over, the downcast
Hmm.
eyes. Like that's a very different face that still is shame, but it's shame projected through or combined with anger. And um,
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I think of rage as shame-filled anger, and it might better be said it has become more shameless. That might be a way that sort of rage expresses itself, but the shame is in the room. Let's
mm,
put it that way. Shame is in the room. And so if you're experiencing someone in front of you with that volatility, or if you have that kind of volatility, that's rage is showing up. Remember, it is an emotion. That rage is an emotion, and it's a big emotion like shame, so it needs big containment. But it's worth looking at for the shame. But I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's a different look, a very different look. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's
and
the
I
word that came to me was like it's this embolden, like it emboldens you um in a way that so instead of dealing with your shame, you're hiding behind this emboldened reaction.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Right. It's still a looking away, and right. It's not bringing me.
Mhm.
That's a, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
mm,
Well, and which one I want to swing back to this really quick. I know our time's about up. It made me think of how you started this, maybe even in our first episode, that um, like bringing somebody back to a secure connection within themselves. That's the place that we can look at what's true from that secure connection that we can just put this on the table because we're grounded, we're secure, we're safe. And this is where we can bring our shame to be healed by beauty and love and forgiveness and yeah, all those things that you
Yeah. Yeah. And, you guys know, I think in images so much of the time. And a really clear image just popped into my head that I see pretty frequently when you were talking that what happens inside, I think of it as like an anchor. Like if I'm anchored to myself, like if a boat is anchored to the floor, if I'm anchored to myself, it actually, shame just dissipates. Shame can't really exist there very well because I just am. And it made me think about a quote that C.S. Lewis has, which I'm going to butcher. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's something like the closest we get to heaven is in the present moment because we can't change the past and we cannot affect the future, but we can be here. And that's where shame starts to dissipate. Yeah. Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So good and so important. And that coming back to the present moment is that's such a big part of the work. And
Yeah.
Patria, such an honor to have you here, and I just I've experienced your voice so much already, and I feel like it's never enough. But thank you for taking this time to be with us and our listeners, and we are just grateful for you and your presence in our lives.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for what you're doing in the lives of, you're not just working with clients, you've created through your gifting the building up of so many women into their giftings. I mean, this is going to make me a little emotional, but it's like you're one of the most selfless people that I know, Patria, and it's um it's just watching you in your gifting causes me to get excited about mine.
That makes me want to weep with joy. That is so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah.
The word
Thank you.
The word that comes to my mind is flourishing. And we've talked about this a couple of times in this series on the war on shame, is that when women step into our healing, when we break free from shame, we call everyone around us into flourishing. And this is what we're experiencing with one another, and what we want for everyone in the world. And
yes,
The whole world.
yes, the whole world. If we could create a movement of women who don't have to envy because there's enough to go around. There's enough seats at the table. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we are. We're creating it.
that's gonna be another series. So let's look at our
Yes.
calendars.
Okay.
It's happening.
I'm in it.
It's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is happening. That's true.
Love you both.
Love you too.
Patria, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And yes, you are welcome back at any time. And we look forward to hearing your podcast that will be coming up soon too,
Yes.
for the
Thank
broken
you.
and the beautiful. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you both for coming back again and again and again. Yeah. To the work. It's hard and beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you too.